All right. Hey, it always freaks me out. Sometimes I don't get to go live until after my guest gets it, but this time I think I got it at the right time. Anyway, it is
That's a
Brent
falling start.
Leary. That's right. Hey, it's Brent. It's the first live stream of the week. You know, it's the BBC, the one that comes from you to you in Stockbridge, Georgia, not the other dudes, although they do some pretty good work too. Anyway, this is actually a conversation I always enjoy having because I always love getting what the latest scoop and the latest developments and latest trends and what's going on with conversational intelligence, or as you may call it, conversational AI. You may call it voice or voice bots or just bots, whatever you call it. I call on this guy when I want to have that conversation. This guy being Dan Miller, the founder and lead analyst for Opus Research. Dan, thank you for joining me as usual,
Oh
sir.
yeah, I look forward to this. So let's make it meaningful.
I'm glad someone looks forward to it besides me, because anyway. Now this is great, man. So we're, I think we're kind of getting close to the end of the tunnel for the post pandemic. We got this bump in the road with this Delta stuff, but I think we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I was just curious, just to throw it out there. I mean, you've been involved with this conversational stuff for decades. This last year and a half, I'm sure, has been kind of different than some of the
Yeah.
previous. But what has the last 16, 18 months, how has that impacted kind of the trajectory of what conversational intelligence, where it was and where it seems to be going,
Yeah.
probably because of the impact that's taken place in the last 18 months?
Yeah. And by now it's a cliche when people say, people in the contact center business, in the cloud business, in the conversational AI business have said, we've seen an acceleration of deployments. We've seen technology advance in 3 months faster than it had in the past 5 years. Or you could turn that the other way and say, oh, things that were supposed to happen 3 years from now are happening now. And it's definitely driven by the fact that homebound people had to figure out how to do things on digital channels that we used to do face to face, at the same time that the brands that they interact with didn't have the employees coming in to handle the calls. So the CX experts in larger companies, and then followed by a trickle down, they had pilot projects or stuff in their sandbox that they moved from their digital transformation department, whatever that meant, into the critical path between companies and their customers. And guess what? It worked. I mean, you do hear some complaints, but as a technology analyst that gets presented slideware showing some of the top recognized brands in the world handling a spike in traffic, new topics, all this stuff. We each may have our personal experience with being on hold for an hour or whatever, but it really drove people to saying, "Hey, I'm going to try a chatbot rather than stand on hold." So we had personal decisions being made where we humans were shoehorned into digital channels to deal with entities, assistants, agents, whatever you want to call that. Were bots, and that's a very positive thing. I said, coming out of the pandemic, you're saying things are opening up. I'm here in New York. I hope that we all learned that eating outdoors is really nice. There's some takeaways from the pandemic and how we've changed our lifestyle that are upgrades, thumbs up. We need to do that, and one of them is that we've gained confidence, either typing or answering these little prompts in our on our smartphones or on websites, or talking to bots, and here.
One of the things I had this conversation, maybe it was last week or something like that. Because of the shutdown, contactless. Everything had gone contactless. Uh, and contactless could mean a lot of different things. But what did it mean in terms of like voice interactions or using voice first technology? Did
Yeah.
it have an impact? What kind of impact?
Yeah.
Good, bad, other?
Well, voice is touchless. Voice IO is the prototypic touchless. So um, I would say if anything, and my head is spinning because there was I can't remember what magazine there was an article about how if you're feeling unsure about yourself, after 13 months you're going out and you're gonna take a bus or something. I personally, I've started commuting again, and the first time, I got the Metro card wrong because you just sort of forget things. So our behavior has been changed. The uh, the companies that have built voice bots or voice assistants knew from the beginning that, like I said, it was the prototype of a touchless user interface. There had been plans in sort of a Minority Report way of having retail kiosks and stuff like that recognize your voice, respond to your commands, all that sort of thing. And I think there are aspects. I did some promos for our talk today saying, hey, why is it taking so long for voice to catch on? And we know that there's concern about how these entities get trained. Are they capturing our speech? Is Amazon listening to everything you say so that Alexa can understand what you're saying and all that sort of stuff? And a move to touchless, a light bulb going on that, hey, if it's touchless, why aren't you just using your voice? What do you have? You have voice, you have gesture. There's a number of things where, the probability of it moving into the mainstream moved from, whatever, 30% to 50%, 50% to 80%, depending on where it was at. And, we're not where we should be, but the good news is the technology for touchless voice-based commerce, command and control of things is it's really good. There's skepticism around it because when it was introduced, when things like even a voice remote for your TV was introduced 25 years ago, it didn't always understand what you said, and as recently as 4 years ago, it was probably 60 or 70% accurate when you were sort of out of the standard where's the pay-per view, tune HBO or something like that. And now you look at the guide and you can like pick a program and what do you have to do now? You have to pick a program, pick a source. You kind of have to know what network it's on if you're tuning. And now it's faster to just say, go to the Olympic gymnastics right now, and it figures out whether it's on Peacock or NBCSN or NBC or something like that. So there's going to be more and more instances where you go voice command, and it is a shorter way to arrive at where you want to get than just using whoever. Did I tell you I want to do a series called "What Genius Thought of Blank"? So what genius thought that if I wanted to watch the Olympics, such and such an event, that I would have to go to some non-existent guide somewhere and say, okay, I want to see Simone Biles. Well, she vanished from every event, but I want to see a replay of the one thing that she did. And maybe it's, maybe I could have seen it live, but I don't think so. Maybe I could just put a standing order in, send me alert. but but rather than having to know whether it's on NBC in prime time, on Peacock in real time, or on demand or whatever, I could probably just tell a spoken remote, I want to see Simone Biles in the Beam final, and have it figure it out, and that's where it's going.
One of the things that it kind of occurs to me is that we've gotten so used to communicating in a way that we think computers will understand, that it almost feels like we got away from, just being able to say what we want, in terms of, we try to speak so that computers understand it, instead of like speaking the way that we would speak to another human being. Do you think that we're any closer? You said the technology for speech, the be able to understand what we're saying has gotten really good. But do you think humans are just so used to speaking computer that we kind of gotten away from being able to, just speak the first thing that comes out of our head, and hoping that the technology is actually caught up to us? So we're still try to speak to it, and not speak to it in a way that we would normally speak to somebody else at this point.
No doubt. So and it's not just speech. It is a couple things have been happening. Our way of interacting with computers, like you put it, has increasingly been defined by how we deal with a search bar. Be it most often Google, but same thing with Bing and whoever else, DuckDuckGo, whoever else you want to use. That and I, among other things, as part of conversational whatever we used to call it conversational access technologies, I had been looking at search and search engines, going back, pre Yahoo, Ask Jeeves, all that sort of stuff.
That's Jeeves. I remember that.
And at first it was really annoying, because if you had been sort of in the library business and looked at search strings as they were defined, you learned that the more words you put in, the more specific the search got, and the narrower the responses. And then something like Google comes along and it didn't seem to matter. You would think, back when, whatever search term you came up with, you'd get like this long list of links to click through or whatever. And then there was this intermediary, which was, who paid for advertising? So, quote above the fold were things you weren't even really asking about. It was some sponsored link based on what you. So my long-winded way of saying, people got very cynical about entering search terms and getting the results that they wanted. It was kind of out of their control. But in the who are the companies that are now investing in natural language processing, natural language understanding in the bajillions of dollars? I don't know how many zeros are after that. And it's Google or Amazon. And the purpose is to hear you speak the way you're comfortable speaking, arrive at the intent and what you're really asking for, and then responding specifically to that. So the technology supports speaking the way you speak, but your brain is telling you, 5 years ago, I was saying your brain trains you to bark. You basically say, what's the weather in Dallas? Or, you just keep things really short. And I think we're going to be at that point for as long as, as our brains. So this is years, not months. We're still at a point where we're trying to guess the best way to have the computer understand us. We've come a long way, because in addition to just the imprecision of search engines, automated speech recognition, ASR, has had its own evolution from concatenated speech. So like the very first things, basically you had a machine that could recognize the numbers 0 through 9 and yes and no, and you could talk to them as long as you were like, naming an extent, picking an option or saying yes or no. And there are still, people my age and a little younger that still think that to get a a voice bot or something to understand you, you have to slow down and talk like a robot. So you'll see that for a while. But then we're being conditioned by Amazon and Google with the home assistants to just sort of say, hey, you got to be careful. No, I don't have one in here today. Alexa, where's my package? And they're doing a lot of the homework. The language scientists and the user interface developers at those shops are making it almost a foregone conclusion that it'll understand what you said and then even anticipate what the follow-on is. So we're redefining what success is. It's no longer, hey, I'll answer your question, I'm done, to, oh, because you asked, what's my checking account balance, maybe it asserts, oh, and now you can afford that Tesla that you've been searching for.
One of the things that it just comes to mind is you've been in this, researching this, writing about it, talking about it for so long. When you think of 2021, where should, voice conversational AI, where should it be right now? How should we actually be using it? Not what we're doing now, but in your estimation, what should we be doing with this now? How should companies be deploying this from a customer experience perspective, and also like from an employee experience perspective?
Absolutely. Well, now that the adoption has been accelerated 3 years in the past 3 months, we're right about where we ought to be. But I think the technology is more than good enough, and it's about where I've always wanted to see it. I mean, there's really accurate recognition of what we say. Underneath the hood, there's just been a lot of things going on. And I think there's an appreciation by the investment community, because every day you look on Crunchbase and an ASR or speech analytics or a bot company has been raising tens of millions of dollars. So we're close to a point where, at least from the investment point of view, we're just about to be pushed to a really good place. And how would I define a really good place? And then I'll say where we are. It is where we are. Like in everybody's pocket, almost, in I don't know, 500 million people, however many people have smartphones, have a resource that recognizes what they say. There's tens of millions of intelligent speakers. That's the next candidate, where people are talking to things and invoke. And in every car that's being sold, should you want to avail yourself of voice command, voice search, voice commerce, you can do it. So the groundwork is laid for just about anywhere you are to use your voice to get what you want, which is all we've been thinking ought to happen. And then there are mitigating circumstances that will which were all anticipatable. It is an invasion of privacy to capture everything you say in order to train a device. The things were not accurate or useful for the until the past 2 years. So you have people that tried it 5 years ago, or well, Siri's been out 11 years. If you were gonna sort of gauge success at that point, if you were gonna build a community of skeptics, one of the best ways to do it is to introduce something that falls just this much short of what people expected it or needed it to do. And that's most of the voice assistants that came out. But they've evolved and they've learned, and I think in terms of the supply side, we're in a very good spot. In terms of demand, there's market conditioning to do. Just as we've learned to accept like anti-vaxxers, there's going to be anti-voice people. So
anti-voicers,
and then we just they just have to prove their usefulness and work and play well with other modalities and across multiple devices, because all we've ever said is the center of gravity moved from accurate capture and rendering of the spoken word for the purposes of transcription. And there's some new companies by new 2, 3, 4 years old they're just doing amazing things with accurately hearing and rendering what they're seeing, and then also developing the resources to work with the either their own or speech analytics companies that get from accurate recognition of the words that are said to their meaning and to the intent of the speaker, and all this stuff that, like I said, 3 years ago it wasn't a pipe dream, but it didn't work always. And then now we so now it's going to be use case driven and what I call success driven, because as people successfully use these things, they'll use them again, and success breeds success.
One of the things, I had a conversation with Dharmesh Shah, co-founder over at HubSpot. This had to have been like 5 years ago, something like that. And we got on this topic around the voice stuff, and he said, look, the best input channel for anything is natural voice, human voice.
Yeah, Bill Gates has said the same thing. Steve Jobs has said the same thing. It's true.
It's true. And yet, and we all know, like, CRM applications, notorious that people don't want to use them. They don't want to have to put a lot of stuff in. They don't want to have to do a lot of typing. It just seems to me that as you were talking about this technology and how far it's come, and how there's still the same challenges with using systems like a CRM application from an input standpoint. And because of that, the adoption levels are low. So it just seems to me that if CRM is an enterprise, from what I've been heard for these years, CRM is an enterprise critical system because of the information it has and the opportunity to for the interactions to improve as you go through the process of building a relationship. But the input has still been an issue, and because of that, the adoption has still been an issue. And yet, and still, we've got this technology that seems to make it very easy, or easier, for people to speak and for computers to understand what they're saying. It would just seem to me that we'd be further along with folks being able to talk to their applications instead of having to actually type and swipe and do all this stuff. Right. Because we all know, like Bill and Dharmesh and Steve have said, voice is the best input. So why do you think we haven't seen more business applications like CRM be able to let people speak to their applications more to get stuff done?
Yeah, I I don't have a good answer for that because I remember, because we'd done a lot of work with Nuance, one of the foundational companies in speech recognition, now part of Microsoft. And hold that thought, because I think there's some Microsoft Nuance discussion to have here. That's part and parcel of answering the question you just asked. But we always said it was going to be use case driven, and that you could find instances where you are making it more convenient and even better, more profitable to use a voice IO. So naturally, when thinking about CRM, the notion of a salesperson away from the office in their car, putting in their expense reports, you'd think, holy smokes, that would be if you could shorthand that so that they could submit these and they could be timely, they get their money quicker, we could just build this. And this is one of those instances where it was once again, this is like 12 or whatever years ago, and it just wasn't accurate enough. And you still had to, after you said everything, see what it got written to, make sure it was okay. So you weren't really saving time and going, as you put it, 100% hands-free. But now we're getting a lot closer to that. So you will see. Actually, I shouldn't speak in the purpose. We are seeing in the future. We are seeing. As I put it, those instances where using your voice to accelerate things that would have taken longer to input it's just poised to really take off. So now, that Microsoft bought Nuance for billions of dollars.
Well, almost 20 billion, right? Something in that neighborhood.
Yeah. By the time you put everything, and Satya, talked to the analysts about why, and he brought up healthcare as sort of where it was gonna have the biggest impact. And I zoomed out and thought, well, okay, that's a great story, but there's other assets that Nuance brings after being being in the business for 30 years or whatever, and it has something to do with voice input. But the more I thought about it, the more this healthcare use case or usage model, so both the way machines help people and understand, and the architecture of a solution that includes Azure, of course. It gets pretty compelling, and it has a CRM to it, meaning that what Nuance has been courting investors with since they came under new management, they spun off their car division, they spun off some of the pure just ASR stuff and moved to natural language understanding. They have biometrics, they have all this stuff that included this presentation of ambient care for doctors. And the idea, is based on the simple observation that I don't know if you've gone to the doctor's office lately, because a lot of things became sort of screen-based. But one of the things that got important, was you go to the doctor's office and they're all walking around with laptops now. And as they talk to you, they're populating something that goes into your electronic health records. They use a system called Epic, and there's another leader there, and I never remember the names. But Nuance came up with the idea that what if you wanted to have eye contact with your doctor, and if you have accurate speech recognition that includes all the jargon and drug names and diagnoses and procedures and stuff, and renders that accurately. Which incidentally they had, because they've been doing dictation of doctors' records sort of after the fact they've been a leader in that for a number of years. But the idea was, if you can do speaker separation, so when the doctor's talking versus the patient, you come up with a record, and that's accurate, that recognizes all these obscure words, can apply some analytics to, so you get a summary of it, and then the doctor's able to spend better time with the patient rather than not looking up, asking, oh, where's it hurt, or what. And and then Nuance has the hooks into the back end systems to do electronic healthcare records, so you get in the healthcare vertical, you have a pretty formidable way of showing how voice assistants are going to improve, or automation of that stuff improves the relationship between the caregiver and the client. And then think about that in almost any teleconference or a Zoom meeting. The diarization of speakers, the recognition of what's said, the ability to understand jargon, the ability to do a summary at the end. That's succeeding now. That is happening. And then think in a contact center, somebody calls up, it detects who the customer is, who the agent is, separates the thing, recognizes what was said, what was committed to, writes it to the CRM system. Yep. That just improves the way and speeds up. It improves the way people help each other, and it speeds up the processes that go on in the background that we don't even want to think about.
That's what we want, though, right? I mean, we don't want to have to think about that kind of stuff. We want to be able to just say what we need to say and have it experienced the way we need to experience without the distractions of a doctor having to worry about typing or look down at something. Telemedicine is great if you see the doctor actually looking at you, as opposed to, all these. So I think that's great. You talked about Nuance and Microsoft, and you talked about a number of acquisitions. Are we seeing acquisitions being made because it's time to be integrating voice technology into more traditional aspects of technology, even of business applications? Do you see that as the first step into voice really just becoming another piece of the puzzle, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, the center of gravity is moving to the natural language processing, natural language understanding, the predictive analytics and stuff that does treat voice or the transcripts of we call it conversational intelligence. So the content of the conversations among people is is an information asset. And then the acquisitions that we're seeing are kind of a completion of a complete solution that doesn't care whether the input came in as voice and was transcribed, comes in as text and is text, was the content of a comma delimited spreadsheet somewhere. It's the triumph of analytics and triumph of deep neural networking of all things. But the fact that you can look at voluminous amounts of data, detect patterns, turn the data into information to intelligence, intelligence into recommendations. This is all happening a lot faster. And then, you can talk about voice in a number of ways there, because when you think about it, an Amazon Web Services with Lex as a speech recognition resource, and Polly as a speech rendering resource, and there and Google with Dialogflow, but with its voice understanding, they in a way have tried to make voice just a commodity. The fact that you can capture what somebody says and understand it, and then do it on a pay-as-you-go basis. It's being made accessible into all sorts of applications and platforms, independent of whether somebody acquires it. Right now you can sort of contract for the fruits of billions and billions of dollars spent to make computers understand what you're saying, which works for a lot of people, but there's still a need for the specialists who get it even more accurate, or cover more languages, help you go global and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating time because you have, the recent acquisition of Clarabridge getting bought by Qualtrics.
Yeah.
And all that is like, analyzing text, turning it into data, like you were saying, and not just analyzing the text for you, but the sentiment behind the text. And then you look at, voice being the best interface. So you have that on the front end of even that. So it's almost like you see a pathway to some of this stuff happening. It's just a matter of, when is it going to get there? That's the whole thing, because you can see it kind of all lining up. I mean, you've got these acquisitions, like you're saying, that, is it privacy? Do you think is privacy the last big hurdle for voice? Because like you said, sometimes we don't know what device is listening and when, and so it's like, well, what is this picking up, and where is this stuff going? Because I'm not necessarily saying this stuff, for it to all be consumed and analyzed and turned into something. And that's where I think maybe the biggest hurdle of all with voice is just the privacy aspects of not having a lot of control. Once you say it, even if you're maybe thinking out loud, well, thinking out loud is now going into the cloud, so to speak.
Yeah, it is a trust thing, and so yes, privacy is a major factor. And that just doesn't apply just to voice. It's like when you surf the web, when you do searches, all that stuff, when you voluntarily put pictures in your life story on Facebook. I mean, it's a barrier. There's probably two categories of end users to think about, because there are folks and influencers who are knowingly saying we got to put an end to this. We live in a surveillance society, and big brands and people we don't even know about are obtaining our personal information, including our voice, our biometrics, and all that. And they're unscrupulous, and they sell it to others, and it's the worst thing in the world. And they're not wrong, and they're going to be hard to convince, that, hey, in the interest of having better understanding of, what you want based on what you're saying, you need, somebody's got to acquire this for you. So, there's at least 50% of the population that's saying, I don't want these things that hear me and send it up to the cloud in my life. And that's pretty formidable. I may be one of them, but I also use these all the time. So it's a barrier, like a speed ramp or the rumble tape or something. But it raises awareness. But it puts the onus on service providers to demonstrate that there's an advantage to sharing this stuff. And it's also, my long-term goal is that companies are more explicit about when they're capturing stuff and what they're doing with it, A, and B, giving me better tools to say no than to who know, it's, when you go to the website and they say we use cookies, and all you really want to do is read the recap of last night's Cleveland baseball team, Guardians, maybe.
Yeah, the Guardians now, man. That's your
Yeah,
team, right?
that's my team. The Guardians, that's my team. Uh, so out and out, the fact that there are bad actors doing bad stuff is a deterrent. The fact that there is this rightfully detected concern for privacy, and a failure to provide people with controls or explicit sort of statements of, hey, let us know what you want to share, but bear in mind, we get better when you share more X. The more we hear you, the better we react. And I mean, you got to remember that the big barriers when these things were starting is like, if you got Dragon Dictate in 2013, you spent 2 hours training it. They said, oh, just pick up a book and read to us for however long, and we'll get to know your voice. And these things are sort of speaker dependent, not completely accurate. Well, they, once they were trained on you and knew you could, you could write a book easily by dictating it. And now we're speaker independent, highly accurate, understand jargon, all this stuff. And so, we've overcome some of those time barriers, and now the rest is just in our head. Which means that the solution providers have to prove value. I will only consent to such and such if I see what's in it for me.
Right. Well, what are we going to be talking about 2 years from now? Where should we be? Where do you hope? What do you hope we're talking about 2 years from now with this stuff?
Well, I'm having a deja vu. Well, 2 years ago, I probably said the same damn thing. So part and parcel of building confidence that these voice assistants are of any value to me is that it's acting on my behalf. It's granting agency to a voice-enabled or natural language understanding entity, so that our way, so the pandemic sort of accelerated the number of things I would voluntarily do on a digital channel. So generic person, generic human, am on this path to figure out how to do more on my own behalf. I'm going to discover that I can do more with my voice more quickly than alternatives. But I'm still distrustful of who am I talking to again? I mean, do I trust Amazon enough that blah, blah, blah. So 2 years from now, when each of us has our own sort of personal assistant, personal agent, lives in here probably, that I invoke to do stuff, and then it turns into like the movie Her, So yeah, you have your phone in your front pocket. It's reminding you of your appointments or when you have to leave and blah blah blah. So they always, they said there's not a single discovery and new technology that's been invented and put into use that wasn't first in a science fiction book. so pull this out of 2 years from now, pull this out of the archives, say that, hey, we're going to be talking about how well whomever, I don't know what the trusted entity is, is it my bank, is it the credit, somebody that issues my credit cards, is it Amazon itself that sort of convinces me that there's a mini me or whatever that understands what I'm going to say, can serve up reminders. So voice is integrated in everything. So I don't think we're going to be talking technology so much, because already you know
Mm.
that it works in noisy environments. So the voice, so how it is integrated with trusted entities. What I'd love to know is how quickly things like self-sovereign identity, because this all gets linked, because your voice is you, let's say. So we'll be talking about how well we're being served by digital resources, and voice is just a little part of that. So it becomes taken for granted, but
Mm.
then all the evergreen topics have sort of blossomed to be concerns to be dealt with. So privacy is probably still a thing, and
Mm.
but I think it should manifest as, hey, what tools are you provided, in your smartphone or whatever. I mean, this is going to have amazing staying power, but maybe it's small. It's the personal electronic complex. Is it an implant? Is it your
Ah,
watch? Is it your smartphone? But you know. Uh, how well it gives you control of stuff. So there's a command and control of the stuff you use, but then how you use your voice to take command of what you're willing to reveal about yourself to get stuff done. So you'll just
mm.
see it, voice and gesture uh, playing a really important part with how you carry out your business. My I have a friend that just got a new band for his Apple Watch that
Mhm.
lets him take control of it by moving his fingers in specific ways. So you can answer the phone, you can return a text, you can spell stuff. So when you think about it, that's an alternative to using your voice to dictate things or commands. So there'll
Yeah,
always be a need for a silent way to control things too. So how voice
absolutely.
is balanced with all these alternatives, we'll still be talking about in 2 years.
Okay. One last quick question. I had this conversation with Brett Kinsella over at
Yep.
VoiceBot, and we were talking about the different kind of the big platform players like Amazon and Google and Microsoft. And I started thinking, well, what's going on with Cortana? It feels like Microsoft has really dropped the ball on that. And then he said something to the effect of, well, don't be surprised if Microsoft is a real big winner in this space because of Azure and cognitive services and the actual tools that they have to allow a lot of these, a lot of the development to take place. Do you see that same way? Do you think Microsoft, despite whatever is going on with Cortana,
Yeah.
do you think that they have put together the components that will make them a big winner because people actually are leveraging them in their services to do a lot of these things?
Oh, absolutely. So there's a really big pie here, but yeah, so, between the bot framework and Lewis and all this stuff that they already had in house, there's at least in the enterprise, there's so much Microsoft goop out there, and yeah, we hear all the time about implementations that are essentially built on Microsoft, and they've been very quietly doing fine, thank you very much. But we kind of hear the same, at least in the enterprise contact center side, when you start hearing of the machinations, that's not the good word, well, just sort of what Amazon's doing with Connect, with its relations with Salesforce, when you sort of think about bringing in a solution that's kind of open in its own way, but that you buy, there's so many people in Amazon, so many companies in Amazon Web Services that are looking at their customer and employee facing resources and saying, hey, if I do Amazon and I do Amazon Connect, I'm getting all this stuff in there, and I just have to click a button to activate, the speech part, the natural language understanding part, and all that. And then while we're at it, Google, Dialogflow had early primacy in terms of that. Hey, it's getting dragged into all of these solutions, and now they have, Google for the contact center AI. They're all trying to make it easy to bring their AI part in, which, if you think about it, it takes accurate speech recognition for granted, and then it's adding that other stuff. So 2 years from now, like I said, we'll probably be talking more about tooling, and if the world's more like where I would like to see it, where we're taking control of our own lives rather than turning it over to these people, there'll be something about the personal tools that we're provided to take better command. And voice will be part of it, but it's not the sharp end of the spear anymore, if it ever was.
Wow. All right, Dan, this has been great. We definitely, I look forward to having these kind of conversations because things are moving fast, and I know you're on top of it and have been on top of it for years. So where can people learn more about what you do, and if there's any
I put everything
you guys are coming out?
Yeah. So we're coming out with a report on conversational intelligence. So that's a much maligned term, much misunderstood term. Actually, if people are using it or some semblance of it, they're thinking about customer data platform, personal information. What we're trying to say is that there's first party data that, from our point of view, emanates from us. We're the first party, and
right.
And I guess we could have framed our discussion of voice as like the touchless conduit for first party data. But then, what happens with it, who provides resources for understanding it, doing the analytics, figuring out how to make it purpose-based. And so that's our next report. There's no events lately. This is so weird. You can't see me on the road. But check our website, www.opusresearch.net, because we do have a number of webcasts of our own coming up with various clients and tackling some cool topical issues. And it was great to take some time to talk to you.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely be doing this again because, man, I mean, stuff is moving. Acquisitions are flying all over the place. Every time we speak, and the last time I think we spoke, it was around the Microsoft Nuance one. Now Zoom bought Five9 lately. We just talked about Qualtrics and Clarabridge, and everything has an implication around voice to a certain extent. Video and voice. You can't get away from those two things.
Yeah.
So.
And then they're adding emotion detection or empathy as sort of a framing, and bring a panel of experts together about that, and I'll sit in on it. I actually got a good we're doing a webcast in September about effective communications, which is what I prefer to, rather than empathy. Effective with an A means influenced by emotion, and I came up with the name. It's making effective communications effective, and effective means oriented towards an outcome. So this notion that you could do a better job of sort of understanding the emotional state of who's talking, but then do something about it so that you're more effective is a fun talk. So being empathetic is not the end in itself.
That's great. I definitely think I want to check that one out. But you might have sparked an idea for one of our next CRM Players executive roundtables. Because
absolutely.
Get
Paul talking about CDPs and
Yeah, now you're trying to start something. Anyway, Dan, it's been great.
Me to do one other thing, which is I'm writing an essay called "Headless Doesn't Mean Brainless."
That's for ZDNet for his ZDNet
no,
thing?
no, he was on with you talking about, I don't know why we're
That's right.
dealing with headless.
That's right. I forgot all about that. Absolutely. So yeah, well, stay tuned because I think that's a great idea. We're still trying to figure out what the next one of those things are. But man, Dan, this has been great. We definitely have to make sure we keep on doing these things because
Thank you for
things are moving so quick. Yeah, absolutely. So thank everybody for checking us out. And what's today? Wednesday. So that means Serum Players tomorrow. I think we're talking about Dina Apostolo from Contentful. Those folks just raised like a ton of money. So we're going to be talking about what they're going to do with all that money around this.
And will Nicole be back?
We're going to try to rope her back in. You know, she just fled from us not too long ago to go to Contentful. Exactly. We need to bring her back. Hopefully we'll be able to bring her out. But check us out and you'll see if Nicole makes another special guest appearance tonight. Okay. Thanks again. And we'll see you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.